Greetings, citizens of Spaceship Earth. Let's start in the United States of America with Fed to unemployed, you're on your own. Markets crashed yesterday in part due to fears that a gridlocked Congress would let the payroll tax cuts and the expanded unemployment benefits expire. Today they got more bad news. The Federal Reserve has rejected nominal GDP targeting, a policy that Goldman Sachs estimated could shave more than 1 percentage point off the unemployment rate. NGDP targeting basically means that the Fed commits to a certain level of growth and then does whatever is necessary to get us there. For more on the policy, read Brad's FAQ link. For more on why the Fed rejected it, read Matt Iglesias' link. But the bottom line is that Congress is too gridlocked to act, and the Federal Reserve is too cautious to act. So the unemployed are pretty much on their own. Writing from London, Lord Skidelsky writes an article in Project Syndicate entitled The Wages of Economic Ignorance. Politicians are masters at passing the buck. Everything good that happens reflects their exceptional talents and efforts. Everything bad is caused by someone or something else. The economy is a classic field for this strategy. 3 years after the global economy's near collapse, the feeble recovery has already petered out in most developed countries, whose economic inertia will drag down the rest. Pundits decry a double-dip recession, but in some countries the first dip never ended. For example, Greek GDP has been dipping for 3 years. When we ask politicians to explain these deplorable results, they reply in unison, "It's not our fault." Recovery, goes the refrain, had been derailed by the Eurozone crisis, but this is to turn the matter on its head. The Eurozone crisis did not derail recovery. It's the result of a lack of recovery. It is the natural, predictable, and by many predicted result of the main European countries' deliberate policy of repressing aggregate demand. Aggregate demand. Right. Let's go on to Edward Harrison credit write-downs and start linking this all together. He is quoting Lord Skidelsky. Got it? Lord Skidelsky goes on to say lots more about more economic stuff. He wrote a biography of Lord Keynes, so, that's where we're at there, man. Let me translate that, the Skidelsky stuff, the way I write. Lord Skidelsky is saying that any fool could see that the private sector was getting killed by a retrenchment of consumers and businesses. Without the government filling the gap via automatic stabilizers, we would already have been in depression globally as they are in Greece, Spain and Ireland. Now, the economic ignorance of our policy-making elite is telling us to fight private sector retrenchment with public sector retrenchment, as if that will make things better. No, it will make things worse. Considerably so. But hey, that's what people are saying we should do. I mean, that's what will be coming through your televisions and radios. The question is, why are they saying this? ? I think economic ignorance is probably right here, but there is also a sense among many that even if this policy leads to depression, it is better to take the bitter pill now than throwing money at the problem and making the credit bubble worse down the line. I have a lot of sympathy for that line of thinking. Edward's site is called Credit Write-Downs, and there is a reason for it. The real problem, question, is how to prevent the deflating of the credit bubble and the attendant deflationary spiral from leading to civil unrest, nationalism and geopolitical tension. My answer is that you have to fight against austerity. Let the automatic stabilizers be robust. That means, the government pays for people that find themselves in unfortunate positions. And let them do their job until the write-downs have been taken. That way, we get a sharp break and reboot without everyone becoming destitute. I'm not too happy with the writing of that. The way we get that way we get a sharp break and reboot without everyone becoming destitute. Eventually, there will be a break and a restart and a reboot. But the crucial writing there is without everyone becoming destitute. Eventually the depressionary cycle downwards to destitution will be broken, and we'll get to that later. The problem is allowing the credit bubble to deflate. It's a problem, it's real, it's there, it's got to go away, but what are we going to do while it's going away? And then piling on by defaulting the public sector at the same time. Tell government, if you want to do anything, invest in infrastructure. If you want to do anything, invest in infrastructure. But on the whole, don't intervene pro or anti-cyclically. Don't cut spending. Don't cut rates. Don't do QE. Don't do cash for clunkers. All that kind of palaver. Let the credit bubble deflate. But be damn sure you have robust enough of a social safety net before you do. That's my solution, one part Austrian, one part Keynesian. Of course, that is not how it will play out. Skidelsky has the mindset pegged right. So, starting again with Skidelsky has the mindset pegged right, we'll quote Skidelsky but from Edward's blog. Of course, austerity will not be carried through to the bitter end. Too much will crack along the way. The banks, the monetary system, social cohesion, the legitimacy of the political regime. Our leaders may be intellectually challenged, but they're not suicidal. Deficit reduction eventually will be put into cold storage, either openly, as he would prefer, or surreptitiously, as is the politician's way. He notes that in the United Kingdom there is already talk of a Plan A+, in other words, a Plan B, not just pushing straight on with austerity. If nothing works, this was later in the article, if nothing works, it will be time to sprinkle the country with what Milton Friedman called helicopter money. That is, put purchasing power directly into people's pockets by giving every household a spending voucher with an expiration date. This would at least keep the economy afloat pending the development of the longer-term investment program. It would be better if such schemes could be agreed upon by all the G20 countries, as was briefly the case in a coordinated stimulus in 2009. If not, groups of countries should pursue them on their own to save their own countries. Right, back to Edward, who's going to sum us up here. It's not getting to the end of his article, which goes on a bit longer, but we'll get to the nutty crunchy bit now. That's exactly right, both in prediction and tone. So, as Christopher Wood predicted a year and a half ago, in the endgame will be a systematic government debt crisis in the Western world, and you can forget about Skidelsky's ideas of renewed coordinated policy stimulus a la 2009's fake recovery as a response. The helicopter drop of which Skidelsky speaks is probably now is how this eventually gets resolved. Brodsky and Quaintonance talked about just such a plan to stabilise the global monetary system last year. Follow the links. I don't see any of this happening before we try the deflationary route first, and this is what I'm getting from the interwebs. That's what I'm getting from the interwebs, that the central banks, the treasuries, the governments don't have what it takes to put forward more reflationary ideas. Things have got to get seriously broken first. We've got to have riots and society running out of control before they will do the reflationary, but they will do the reflationary. And while I have called the age of the fiat currency a 38-year, now 40-year experiment in credit inflation, I recognize that the deflationary route leads to chaos and military confrontation. Policymakers will panic when they see the economic ills their policies create for voters who will revolt in protest. I call it the Scylla and Charybdis of inflationary and deflationary forces, in which policy stimulus is removed, and then only after everything collapses do policymakers press the red button, and then they act super aggressively, leading to wild swings in asset prices, cyclical inflation, currency wars and the like. And then Peter Schiff can come out of the cupboard again. Until then, he can stay in the cupboard. But the point is, as Edward would point out, there's no way that this is going to be nice. Even when the inflationary kicks in eventually, it doesn't mean everything's going to be repaired. It's not going to make everything better. It's just going to go wrong in different ways. And meanwhile, because that's going to take time, the deflationary aggravation on the streets and in the political arena is going to take time, as the European political people now think they've got time or want time to integrate the countries of Europe over an 18 months to 2 year period. It's a laugh to think they can do it in 2 years even, but they think they've got that 2 year period and other things will happen and it'll all be better. But things in Europe are accelerating out of control. And the things that they can't do in 2 years is fix things that are in this Economist graph. I'll run through them quickly because I've taken a bit of time here. GDP per person in the top left, the dark bar is the north and the light blue bar is the south. So GDP per person, $47,000 per person in the north, 34 in the south. Unemployment rate about just over 7 in the north, getting on for 14, nearly double in the south. 2 year government bond yields 2.5 to 8.5, 9. Comparison budget deficits just over 3, -3 in the north, over -5 in the south. Output per hour 55 to 45. You can't cure that quickly. Government gross debt, it's more in the south, over 100, but it's still over 80 in the north. They don't have the wiggle room to splurge big. That's why they're not doing it. But you've got the real problem ones at the bottom there, bottom right. Industrial production change since 2000. In other words, the projection of the economies. In the north, they're up towards +10 and -15 in the south. And that's the one that will really guarantee that the European leaders have got no chance of pushing together things that are like a negative magnet and a positive magnet. They just won't go as long as you've got industrial productions, those wildly different, one going positive and one going negative. And net international investment obviously takes note of all that, with nearly +25 for the north and over -50 in the south. They just won't go together. So this last link in the Financial Times, Brussels plans to bring Eurozone to a heel. Brussels will, on Wednesday, propose measures giving it more authority over the national budgets of Eurozone states, including a requirement to submit tax and spending plans to European Union authorities before their national parliaments. The proposal obtained by the Financial Times would also allow the European Commission, the EU's executive arm, to send fiscal inspectors to Eurozone capitals if it decides a country is experiencing severe difficulties, even if that country's government has not requested them. It's not going to work. So that is going to spiral. The Eurozone is spiraling very quickly out of control. The rest of the world is spiraling slowly out of control. And the authorities, the powers that be, have decided to sit back and watch it spiral out of control before they will act in an aggressively supportive way. But note again that when they do eventually act in the supportive way, that's not going to cure anything either. It'll just go wrong in a different way. Bye.